Welcome everyone, I'm Jeffrey Goodman, Director of Marketing and Development for the YMCA of Northwest Louisiana, and we're here at 318 Latino Studios for Shreveport-Bossier, my city, my community, my home. And can't wait to have today's discussion. Our special guest is retired Colonel Russ Mathers. Russ, did I get that right?
You got it.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. So, like I told you, if I get anything wrong, please correct me, but you are the Director of STRIKEWERX, the innovation hub of the U.S. Air Force Global Strike Command.
Exactly.
In a little while, I want you to tell me about a couple of STRIKEWERX projects and the problems they help solve.
Okay.
But before you do that, tell me about the origins of STRIKEWERX, when, why, and how it started.
Okay, very good. So General Timothy Ray at the time, Commander Air Force Global Strike Command, wanted to stand up his own innovation hub. He'd seen it happening across the United States Air Force. There's this place called AFWERX that's doing innovation for the Air Force, but they were serving big Air Force, not Air Force Global Strike Command, which is headquartered here at Barksdale, and then the 8 other bases it oversees for the bombers and missiles for the United States Air Force. So he wanted innovation services to support that community, the nuclear community, for that kind of capability. So in 2020, he asked the Air Force Global Strike Command chief scientist to stand up an innovation hub. She chose the Cyber Innovation Center to do that. So we stood that up out at 6300 East Texas, out by Bossier Parish Community College, in what we call the National Cyber Research Park. So the Cyber Innovation Center was there. It's got a couple other buildings. We can talk more about that a little bit later. But we stood that up in 2020, right as COVID was going on. So we had a ribbon cutting in, I think it was June of 2020. I was hired on in April to come on and join STRIKEWERX and stand that up. And we stood that up really just to solve Air Force Global Strike Command's challenges. With aging aircraft and missiles and different systems getting older that were really brought on during the Cold War and haven't been modernized since then, they saw the need to support these. A lot of these companies that develop these kind of the B-52, they're just these subcontractors that produce these parts aren't around anymore. So there's a need to replace a lot of these parts with new capabilities. Now that we've got digital innovation, a lot of advances in computers from what we had in the 1960s. It's a challenge to replace something with exactly what it was. We've got to find a new way to do things. There's a lot of innovation going on in the nuclear community. You want us to lead that. And
you guys, this STRIKEWERX, this innovation hub, you are the innovation hub for
Air Force Global Strike Command headquarters. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to come back to STRIKEWERX in a second, but I want to kind of rewind in Russ's life. So you were part of Operation Secret Squirrel. My question for you is, take me behind the scenes and tell me about this incredible mission.
Oh, wow. That's going back to 1990s, kind of when it started. I was a first lieutenant in the Air Force, so I was about 24 years old at the time, and stationed here at Barksdale Air Force Base as a B-52 co-pilot. And Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait to take over those oil fields, and President Bush didn't know where he was going to stop. You know, if he was going to take the whole country, if he was going to go into neighboring countries, Saudi Arabia, etc., and we had to defend that. So in August of 1990, Saddam invaded, and we didn't have a capability really to do long-range strike. The United States did not. Going back to like 1976, we had in Libya, there was a strike with the 111s out of England, had to fly there. They couldn't fly over France, they had to fly around, so it was a very circuitous route. It was a 16-hour mission in a little fighter, and the men shot down, delivering munitions to strike some tents. Not a real high-value target, and we lost lives because of it. And they wanted a way...
Let me interrupt. What's that? When you say long-range strike, just define for someone who doesn't have a military background and they hear the words long-range strike, what exactly?
This mission we flew called Secret Squirrel was 35 hours, taking off out of Barksdale, going to launch our missiles against Iraqi targets, and then coming back to Barksdale without landing. 4 in-flight refuelings, So that's long-range strike. A fighter mission might be 2 to 4 hours. I'm getting much more than that. It's a long mission for a fighter. So long-range strike is, intercontinental.
Okay.
So we didn't have a long-range strike capability. So the United States Air Force developed this conventional air-launched cruise missile, which we took a nuclear cruise missile, which was a cruise missile with a nuclear warhead, which we were all used to. This is the Cold War. I was out here at Barksdale sitting alert 1 week out of every month, sleeping at the end of the runway, in the alert facility building. For the entire week, you'd stay there right next to the airplane. You'd run out to the airplane when you'd have exercises, and we're ready to go out and strike the Soviet Union. This is the Cold War. So this conventional war against an Iraqi target is a different kind of thinking. But what the United States Air Force did is they took this Cold War weapon with a nuclear weapon and they replaced it, and they put on a new navigation system called GPS. GPS was brand new back then. And there are not enough satellites in the air to really cover all that Middle East target space at the time. To get good accuracy with a GPS, you need 4 satellites, 3 to triangulate, and you need a 4th satellite to look at to get good timing in addition to your position. We didn't have that many satellites in orbit. So we had to reposition satellites. The U.S. Air Force doing their space mission, even back then, had to reposition satellites to do that. And we were on alert. We'd come in every morning at 5 a.m. And, throughout the summer, after August, September, October, we're coming in at 5 a.m. every day. Is this the day we're going to take off and go strike Iraq? Because there's no way to do it. It was going to be 16 hours to get there, but we didn't have any other forces in the Middle East. There was no way to defend Saudi Arabia and Kuwait and defeat Iraq except for us. So we were on alert to come in every day. Okay, nope, guys, you're not launching today. Go home. So you go home, go back to bed early again, get up the next morning. It's Groundhog Day. You're doing this all summer.
Okay, so you're on alert daily and know that maybe any second of any day you could get the call that says you're on. So when did that finally happen and how did that finally occur?
Okay, so President Bush had drawn a line in the sand. January 16th was the day. If Saddam hadn't capitulated by then, he was going to take action. So they called us in on the 14th, and we came in the alert facility, and we had our bombers ready to go, had everything loaded, and they called us in the morning, or like 3 a.m. on the 16th. We go into the briefing room at the end of the alert facility. The Lieutenant General, Commander of 8th Air Force is there, Lieutenant General Buck Schuler. I've never seen this man before, but he's one of the most senior people I'd ever seen up to that point as a young first lieutenant. So it was a big deal. And he said, this is going to be like Doolittle's Raiders. This is breaking a paradigm. You guys are kicking off the war. You're going to be knocking out the eyes and ears of the Iraqis, enabling other forces to go in. So nothing like that setting the scene, put a little pressure on you. So we go out there.
How many people or how many pilots?
Yeah, so we had 57 crew members on 7 jets.
Okay.
So about 7 men at that time. We didn't have women at the time, but 7 men per airplane.
Okay.
And we go out there because we've got an extra pilot and an extra navigator, just because of the long endurance sortie, so you can rotate through and get a little bit of a rest.
And when you hear, just for a non-military person like me or anyone listening, when you hear this could be a paradigm break, or we're breaking the paradigm, is that say there's a danger element involved in this?
Oh yeah, because we didn't know what the Libyans were going to do. The Navy had fought with the Libyans before. They've gotten in dogfights. The F-14 Tomcats at the time. This is right after Top Gun came out. The Top Gun, or the F-14s, had shot down some MiGs that were out of Libya. We didn't know what they were going to do, so that was an unknown. There were other unknowns that would come up, different surface-to-air missiles that would come up and look at us. And so these people have the capability to kill you. We just don't know what their intent is and if they're going to take action on it. So we take off. We fly over the East Coast. Dawn's coming up, and we get over the Atlantic Ocean, air refuel with tankers out of the Azores, small island out in the middle of the Atlantic. Continue on, go through the Straits of Gibraltar into the Mediterranean, refuel again with some tankers that flew out of Spain and came down and met us just east of the Straits of Gibraltar. We continue on. We've got Libya to our south, and we're worried about these MiGs. What's going to happen is Libya going to take action? Do we know what they're going to do? Sometime at that point, there was a fighter that came up in the middle of our formation. We got 7 airplanes all spread out. And 7 airplanes, and then when you think about refueling, you're rejoining with 14 KC-135. So there's 21 airplanes all spread out in a course of about 7 miles wide and about 7 miles long, stacked up at different altitudes. And it's a lot of air power out there. That's a lot of airplanes in one place. And it's kind of like if you saw Masters of the Air, you see all the B-17s and the fighters coming and going and everything. It wasn't quite that, but it was more airplanes than I'd ever seen in one place at one time. So it was, get your blood pumping, and you got to get that gas. It takes, an hour. You're sitting in contact behind the KC-135, about 16 feet away from them for an hour, and you're flying with this yoke. It takes about 35 to 40 pounds of force to move this yoke around. And it is grueling. And then you got your throttle, your fingers all spread out. You got 8 throttles. You got to wrap your hand around, and you're sitting there sweating for an hour. It's quite a workout just to get that gas. And you're going to do that 4 times during this 35-hour mission to get this gas, so you don't have to land. So that's the reason why you also brought an extra pilot, just to swap out. And you've got more experienced guys too. We were all experienced crews, so they selected that. So we've got our gas. We're going through. We had a fighter come up. We didn't know what it was. And after the fact, because you can sense it electronically. You see their electronic signals. We think it was a Navy F-14 that came up just to check us out and look at us, but nobody's really sure what that was. We're sure it's not a MiG or anything because they never took action, and we would have seen that. But we got past Libya. Nothing happened there. We turned south. We're going over the Suez Canal. We see some electronic signals come up, surface-to-air missiles that can shoot us down. And we've got people telling us, you're not clear to proceed. And we tell them, we just kind of keep buying time, and keep heading towards our target. And we get through there, and they don't do anything.
People telling you you're not clear to proceed.
Yeah, air traffic control. They're air traffic controllers.
Other countries
that don't want us to go forward. And of course, we're going to war, and it's going to take more than that to get us to turn around. And leading up to this, we had some people go up to Strategic Air Command headquarters in Offutt Air Force Base. This is back in like August, September. So they're briefing the 3-star up there. And he posed a question to the crew that was briefing him. Okay, what happens if you got a MiG come up behind you and says, turn around or I'm going to shoot you down? And, the young navigator said, well, I guess we're going to turn around. And the 3-star said, no, you're going to continue on. If he's serious, make him shoot you down. You're sitting in an ejection seat. You've got a life raft in your ejection seat, and you're going to use that life raft. That's why we give it to you. So we realized this stuff's serious. So it's going to take quite a bit to make us turn around. We're not turning around just somebody telling us, no, they're going to have to take kinetic action against us. They're going to have to shoot something against us to make us turn around, because these are important targets we're going after. So we got past the surface-to-air missiles, and the next challenge was our own Navy. So in the Red Sea, the Navy had 2 aircraft carrier groups, and they're defending their carrier groups. So you've got young sailors out there sitting on their own surface-to-air missiles. They're protecting these carrier groups and all the ships that are out there supporting them.
Let me interrupt one second. So why isn't there communication between the Air Force and the Navy of the same country saying, hey, we're allies and this is occurring?
Yeah,
There is.
But a lot of it's, we were a black program. I forgot to explain that. Black means special access program. So we were the only people read into this. And we would be, even after we flew this mission, we couldn't talk about it for a year because this was a special access program. This weapon with a GPS weapon and conventional warhead, nobody had ever heard of before. So this is one of those, Secret Squirrel programs. That's why we kind of call it Secret Squirrel, that you can't talk about. So there was not much communication. We do have on the airplane, it's called Identification Friend or Foe, IFF. So we had our IFF on, which sends out an electronic signal with a classified code saying we're United States Air Force. So the Navy's supposed to interrogate that and say, okay, he's a friendly, don't take action against him. But you're trusting your life on this piece of electronic equipment, hoping that sailor interrogates it and reads it correctly and doesn't, protect his fleet. Because, for the sailors, if it flies, it dies. That's what air defense guys talk about. If it flies, it dies. They're going to shoot down anything that they're not expecting. So we're just hoping that everything that had been greased ahead of time did work. Because, that surface-to-air missile from the Navy is just as deadly as one from an Iraqi. So you've got to protect yourself against that.
Did you get any, you got communication from air traffic control?
It took a little while. We talked to the Navy air traffic control, and they acknowledged us, and we continued on without warning. But it always takes a little while because you're worried about, that's what they call the fog of war. Just in all the confusion, anything can happen. Murphy can come up at any time. So we're concerned about that. So we got through that, and the sun's starting to come up, and we're entering where our launch boxes are. So we take our 7 airplanes, we spread them out so they're all a minute apart, and which is about 6 miles, and we've gotten down low, and we launch our cruise missiles. So the cruise missiles are launched a minute apart. Each jet's carrying 6 or 7 cruise missiles, depending on the jet. And you're in your launch box, so you're continuing on your bomb run, launching them like every minute.
And what's the length of time between launch and contact, generally?
2 to 3 hours.
Wow.
Yeah. So that cruise missile is like a little airplane. It's got little wings that sweep out, and it's got a jet engine inside of it, and it'll go fly, 800 miles.
Wow. Okay.
So, and it can't be recalled or anything. So we launch those cruise missiles, and they're going to continue on. We're not going to see those detonations or anything like that, but we see them drop off the airplane, and you feel them because the airplane jumps up a little bit when it drops that 3,000-pound missile. And so we're doing those, and they're on the wings, so I can look out the window and I can see it fall away from the airplane, and that's it. It'll fall below us, then the engine lights up and it goes flying off to the left, going north to hit its targets. So we're doing all that, and we're seeing all these other U.S. Air Force airplanes too, just in the distance, and hearing them on the radios, because you're talking to AWACS and the Airborne Warning and Communication System. They're doing all the command and control of all the fighters and bombers and everybody out there, all the tankers. So you just hear everything on the radio traffic. It's amazing all the air power that's out there. And we do our bomb runs, then we turn around and we exit out, and adrenaline starts to calm down a little bit. You get out, you fence out, you get out of enemy territory, and continue on, reverse course, and we come back. We're headed back again over the Mediterranean. We air refuel again, go back across the Atlantic, head westbound. We hit some more winds, headwinds, more expected, stronger winds than expected. So some of the jets have to take on some extra fuel. We had 2 jets that had to shut down an engine because either low oil pressure or other mechanical reason. They had to shut those down, which causes them to burn more fuel because there's some drag. So those 2 aircraft had to coordinate for an extra refueling. They refueled off the East Coast over South Carolina. Got a 5th tanker for them.
And do you feel at this point, totally safe, or you don't? I mean, someone who's doing this doesn't feel completely secure and safe until it's all over. Until you're back at...
you feel safe once you're out of enemy territory. Because you trust the jet, you're familiar with the jet, you live in that jet, that's your office, that's your home away from home. It's what you've trained for all the time. We do so much training in the United States Air Force that we're very proficient, very comfortable in that environment. So I felt very safe after I get off. I'm not worried about my jet doing something I don't expect.
And are you getting communication on your way back that these have detonated and that the operation has been successful, or what sort of? No,
we didn't have that advanced communication back then in 1991, but we do have a high frequency radio on there, so we could dial that up and hear Voices of America and the BBC and hear that the war has kicked off, initial detonations, and those things were going on. And afterwards, we also heard too that in the Pentagon. They were watching, they knew where our targets were, and the reporters in Baghdad, and they're like, hey, the lights just went out in this building. And the planners in the Pentagon are like, okay, that weapon hit its target, because it should be hitting right 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the lights went dark where that reporter was. So the planners that had set all this up in the Pentagon and also up at Strategic Air Command headquarters in Omaha, Nebraska, they'd planned all this out and had it all the time, so they were kind of following it.
So seven aircraft, 7 planes.
Yep.
How many missiles?
I want to say it was 53 missiles.
Okay.
There were 3 that didn't work for various software reasons on those missiles. And again, this is a very experimental program. So we were very happy with the results to only have 3 that didn't launch. And 87%, I think, of the targets were hit, which is a very high percentage when you're talking about anything, a brand new weapon, fog of war, everything that go wrong. So,
and every participant returned home safely.
Everyone did. So we landed, we taxied back in. We had to pull our airplane into a hangar because we still had a weapon that was hanging on the wing. We didn't want anybody seeing this special access weapon. We couldn't talk about it, so we had to pull that in there and hide that airplane with that weapon. We came back into the squadron afterwards. Everybody's exhausted. You've been up for 48 hours, and you didn't sleep much before the mission because you only had about, we got up at 3 a.m. We only had about 3 hours of sleep before that 35-hour mission. So you're exhausted. And we saw the local congressman on the news. They had him on the screen in the briefing room, and he said, Barksdale B-52 has just kicked off Desert Storm. We're like, yeah. And then one of the colonels like, no, you can't talk about that. I don't care what the congressman just said. Nothing happened. You guys, your cover story is you took an airplane up to Minot Air Force Base, up to Loring Air Force Base in Maine, and you brought another one back. That's your cover story. That's where you were. So I was single at the time, but the guys that were married, that was not, the cover story wasn't very well done at the time because the wives were calling and they're used to it. You remember, like I said, you'd sit alert in that alert facility for a week. Your wife knew exactly where you were, and she would call and she'd know you'd be there. And she'd usually call and they'd patch you through. And we had wives that were calling and they couldn't talk to their husband for 2 days. They're like, where is he? Where is he? Tell me or else I'm going to the media. And so there was tension with that about keeping that straight and keeping the cover on this. After I landed, I went back and there's a place called Gumbo's. I got a po' boy and some fries over on East Kings, and then went back to my house, ate that, called my mom and said, hey, I just got back. I took an airplane up to Maine and just came back. And a year later, after we could talk about it, she's like, I knew you were lying to me. Your mother always knows when you're lying to you. And she's like, I knew that didn't happen. I knew something was going on. So I've told this story before, too, to a group around Mother's Day. And all the mothers get a kick out of that because they know exactly when their kids aren't giving them the 100% story.
Sure.
So moms always know.
Well, that's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to shift gears.
All right.
So I'm going back to STRIKEWERX.
Yep.
My ask of you is choose 2 projects STRIKEWERX has been involved in. Tell me the problems they were trying to solve and how STRIKEWERX became part of the solution.
Okay. I'm going to talk about a process we do. It's called a design sprint. So the problem was up in North Dakota, where all these missile fields are, they move these missiles around. There are these holes in the ground. They have to lower a missile from an 18-wheeler into a vertical hole. And this 18-wheeler's got to go from horizontal to vertical, so it's got some hydraulic arms that swing down and like a hydraulic piston that elevates this. And it's got a footing it goes into. This footing is about a yard long, and it's a rectangular-shaped hole, and it fills up with gravel. There's 2 of them. And it's just a box about the size of this table here. And it fills up with gravel, and then it rains in there and it freezes. This is North Dakota. It gets 30 degrees below zero. And it'll thaw a little bit, and then raining or snow again, then it sets up. And it's set up like concrete. And airmen have to go out and they have to clean out these 2 slots in the ground before they can do any work if they're going to put the missile in there.
And how deep is the missile sitting?
The slot itself is only like 4 inches. That missile is 150 feet in the ground.
Okay.
So it's a vertical. It's a rocket.
Okay.
That's buried underground.
Okay.
So imagine that.
Okay.
But right next to it, the way we get that rocket into the ground is these 2 slots, and they got to be emptied out. And the airmen are out there on their hands and knees, 30 degrees below zero, with an auger, with a drill bit, drilling into that frozen up debris and digging it out. Drilling a little more, digging a little more. And they do this, and it can take them up to 3 hours. And it's just soul-sapping work. And the airmen are like, why don't we build a cover for these things? We've been doing this for 50 years. We've had these missiles out here for 50 years. And we've had these airmen doing this for 50 years. But airmen continue to walk by a problem. And that's one of my sayings is stop walking by problems and stop acknowledging them. Figure out how to do it better. Because this is a quality of life issue for these guys. So they came down, and again, this is right after we opened. This is during COVID. So they come down to our innovation hub. It's set up really cool. It looks like Google. We can write on glass walls and doors on the. We got cool seating like these nice couches. This is nothing like the Air Force is used to with cubicles and brown furniture and really boring stuff.
And this is at CIC. This is at Cyber.
Yeah. Okay. We totally remodeled this entry floor where inventors and entrepreneurs can come in and pitch to us their ideas on how to solve Global Strike Command's problems. We got Apple TV, we got big screens on all the walls. You can broadcast from your phone up to that. All the comm just works. It's really nice. So the airmen aren't used to all these luxuries. And it's where academia and industry can come together with those airmen to solve these problems. So that's how we solved this problem. We brought in a company from Sheridan, Wyoming, who works on F-22 stealth fighter engine inlet covers. And we brought in a student from Louisiana Tech, mechanical engineering student, who was a senior and is professor. And we flew in one airman from each of the missile wings, young guys, about 23 years old, who are out there on their hands and knees having to dig these things out. So we got about a dozen people in the room. And in 5 days, you define the problem, you build some courses of action, you improve on those. And then one of those, we delegate one of those young staff sergeants, we make them the decision maker. They're probably the youngest guys in the room, but they're the ones most familiar with the mission, so we empower them to make the decision. And then we build a prototype on Thursday, and we test the prototype on Friday. So we're going through this. The company from Sheridan, Wyoming's got a good concept, and we help them refine their concept. So they designed this fabric, kind of like a nylon, like in your backpack, or soft-sided luggage you're going to take or something, your roll-on carrier. And they set that up, and we're working with LSUS. They've got a 3D printer out there, a big one out there, Cyber Collaboratory, which is really cool. And we're partnering with them. And we partner with Bossier Parish Community College also for makerspace. They do a lot of metalworking. They got a lot of things that they've worked with Bentler Steel on. And we bring all of them for collaboration. And the company from Sheridan, Wyoming does a great job. And then this kid from Louisiana Tech, he's a senior. He's over sitting in the corner on his laptop for these couple of days, and he's working on his computer-aided design. He comes up with an idea, and it's just a flat steel plate, about a yard long, and it's got a couple dog ears underneath it and a couple on top, so you've frozen in the ground, you can pry it off and things like that. And we like his idea, so we do a 3D print of that also, and we tested on the 3D print of that box that we had printed out from LSUS, and it fit good. So part of what we do is this rapid prototyping. So this was, Thursday night, we're printing this thing. Friday morning, we test it. It works good. The student goes back to Ruston and their metal shop, and he welds up one of these plates. And I drive over Friday night, I pick it up, and I come back and meet the airmen in their parking lot at the Holiday Inn. And I give it to them. Saturday, they fly back home to Minot Air Force Base in their checked luggage. And Monday, they go to work at the facility, and they put it in the ground, they test it, and they're like, hey, Russ, it fits good. We like it. So we go ahead, we buy 12 of each prototype. We build out 12. We test them throughout the winter, and they both do well. The Air Force chooses the steel plate. It's less expensive, and it's more robust, more airman-proof, we call it. And I like to say to keep it simple, stupid principle. It worked really well. And tested well throughout the winter, and the Air Force bought 1,100 of them, and they're installed at all 450 launch facilities throughout the northern United States right now. So that's something with innovation. You want, try something outside the box. If you're going to fail fast, move on. And if you're successful, then you want to scale it and implement it on a broader scale.
And the big thing here is we're saving significant man hours when it's all said and done.
We're saving over 300 man hours, which is not a huge amount, but this is saving really a quality of life. This is a retention thing, how to retain these airmen. This is the best part of my job is work with the airmen, bringing them in, empowering them to make decisions, and they're just excited that their bosses have cut them free from their day job, let them come down to Bossier City, Louisiana, and work on this and solve a problem when we're bringing in industry from doing the best and brightest in academia, these great students over at Louisiana Tech, and bring them together to solve these problems. The airmen love this. They're rolling up their sleeves, they're having fun, figuring out a way to make their life better. So that's really fun. So that was our first design sprint. So that's one tool that we have.
And typically a design sprint's a 5 day?
5 days. Build out a simple Goldilocks kind of prototype and then test it. Now, the follow-on can go, if it's more complicated prototype. They can go longer. It can be a bigger project because some of those have been much larger. But this is our first one, is pretty successful.
All right. Well, give me one other project.
This other one's one we're working on right now, so it hasn't closed out, but it's all about high technology. You hear everything about drone warfare going on in Ukraine and in Israel and Palestine. So there's so many advances going on with unmanned aircraft systems. And we want a capability to protect Global Strike Command mobile assets. Everybody's looking at fixed things, like if I want to protect an airfield or I want to protect an Army base that's forward deployed from drones. Because it used to be enemies would they do IEDs, improvised explosive devices. They dig a hole in the ground, and if you were driving by, they'd blow up that explosive. But they're exposing themselves when they're digging the hole in the ground. Our drones that are out there looking around, we'll see them out there digging and putting an explosive in there, and then we'll use an AC-130 gunship and take them out or something. But now they're all doing it with drones. They don't have to expose themselves. They can just keep a drone hidden, put a bomb on a drone, and fly it against our soldiers out there moving in the Middle East and detonate it. And these high-speed racing drones now, you can put a weapon on those, and you can do a huge amount of damage, very cheap, without being seen. So we've got to figure out a way to protect our mobile assets from that. So if you're going 70 miles an hour down the road, Global Strike wants to be able to protect that vehicle going 70 miles an hour down a road from a threat. Most of the Army is just looking at protecting that fixed site. So doing it mobile is hard. So we're doing a mobile counter UAS to protect mobile assets from swarming intelligent drones.
UAS?
Unmanned aircraft system.
Okay.
Thank you, the drones. So think about, you see the Super Bowl, and they have the halftime show, and you see all the light display. That's really cool, and those are cool looking, nice, sweet drones. But imagine those drones if they had bombs on them. And they start off swarming and autonomous and start attacking you. We've got to be able to protect against that. So this is what we call the big StrikeWERX challenge. It's a big, hairy problem. We don't know exactly how to solve it. We don't know which companies to go to solve it, because nobody can do just all this. You got to be able to detect the drone, and then you got to be able to defeat the drone, and you got to have software to command and control all that and make a laptop that can knit it all together so an airman can sit there and work on the laptop and control it and make a decision, yes, engage, or no, I don't. So we had this big challenge. We had over 60 companies submit. We narrowed it down to about 30 that came to our facility out there in Bossier City. They did like a tech show. They set up all their capabilities. Some are radars, some are, so they're looking for the drones on radar. Some are using radio frequency waves to detect the communications links. Some are drones that are like drone-on-drone warfare. So you can launch a drone to go fight the other drone or capture it or attack it or shoot it with a gun or thing like that. So we got all sorts outside the box thinking going on. So it's really neat. And we settled on one lead company. We put them on a contract to build out. They got about 6 months to build a prototype. And they're bringing on a couple other subs, so they're going to use radar to detect it, because you want to layer it. You want to be able to detect it far out, away from the mobile vehicle, or possibly in close. And some drones are susceptible to one type of detection, and some are others. So we're going to use radar, we're going to use radio frequency to detect, and also electro-optical infrared detection, a camera that does infrared, or just regular camera. So you got 3 different ways to detect. And then we got 2 different ways to defeat it. We're going to use radio frequency to do like a cyber attack against that drone. So it'll either return to sender or it'll just settle to the ground where it was. And we got another one called a killer bee. And it's a drone that takes off, and it's got a net, and it's a high-speed drone. It'll get in front of the bad drone, deploy a net that's about 10 feet across, and the drone flies into that, then gets tumbled up, and it falls to the ground. So we're knitting all that together. It's going to be pulled by an F-350. It's got a flatbed on the back that's got all the radar antennas and all the different electronics, and then it's pulling a flatbed trailer that's got the killer bee drones that it'll launch out of tubes and go strike against those other drones. So they're building that now in Georgia. They're going to demonstrate it, and then we're going to go out to Edwards Air Force Base and test it out there out in Nevada and see how it does out there. So, and like I said, I'm 100% sure this is going to fail. This is a hard thing. This counter UAS is a very difficult mission. And we're innovating, we're pushing the technology. I'm 100% certain it's going to fail. I just don't know where it's going to fail. So we're pushing these companies, Okay, can we do it at 15 miles an hour? If this vehicle's moving at 15 miles an hour and they fly a drone from behind, okay, we should be able to stop that. But if they're flying it from the front, okay, that's harder. If we're going 70 miles an hour, so I'm going 70 miles an hour down I-20, and I got a high-speed racing drone that's 100 miles an hour coming at me, I'm already going 70, that's 170 miles an hour closure. That's not very much time to make a decision and be able to launch a killer drone and go attack it and do all this thing. This is a very hard problem. I'll be surprised if our project is successful with that, but we're going to push it and do as hard as challenge as we can and see how it does.
And then once it fails, what is the next step? It failed, and we have so much more data now to solve it correctly.
Yes.
Hopefully the next time out, or we fail again, but we're getting closer each time to solving it.
We're failing again, but we're getting closer each time. We're learning more and more each time. We looked at using lasers. That's another way to defeat these. But the laser that we had lined up, it fell through, so we couldn't include that as part of the prototype. We also looked at high-powered microwave, which is a directed energy. So you'd have an antenna that would shoot electronic waves at it and disable electronically. So there's different ways to defeat them. So we might try in future iterations some of those other ways. We'll see what the best way is.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, and all this happened out of Bossier City. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to shift you a little bit again. So it's been suggested to me that there are growing needs and business opportunities locally to support the type of work taking place at Barksdale. I'd like to spend the remainder of our discussion here. My first question, I have two questions around this. My first question is, and I asked General Elder the same question. First, what businesses currently exist today in our community, like STRIKEWERX, that are supporting needs at Barksdale? Mm-hmm. So who are the other companies or businesses locally that are supporting these types of needs at Barksdale?
Okay. So we like to think of the Cyber Innovation Center. We're not a local company just doing business here. We are an international company that just happens to be headquartered at Bossier. So while we look, like I said, we comb the earth for these solution providers, but we do like to go local where we can, because part of the mission of the Cyber Innovation Center is to diversify the local economy off of oil and gas, bring in a knowledge-based workforce and these types of jobs, and do that. And we brought in, I think in 2023, we brought in over $190 million per household. We increased the annual income for the local economy of $190 million. So bringing in industries that can do that. So we're very big on bringing in industries. We do one project where we teach airmen how to write code. And these are not communicators. These are not computer airmen. They're guys that are bending sheet metal. They're guys that are crew chiefs, that are launching airplanes. They're pilots. They're all sorts of different backgrounds. But we got a 6-month program where we teach them how to code, and they learn that language, and then they can go back to their day job and use that computer software coding capability to do their job, which is a great opportunity now. And we partnered with a local company called Ruby Shore, a software development company, and we've done a lot of work with them. We do a lot of work with Fairfield Studios. They help us produce videos that talk about our projects and our successes there. We've done work with a company in Ruston called Betaflix. They're building out some virtual reality software. We're doing a lot of virtual reality training to train airmen how to do their job. And with virtual reality goggles, it's just so much more immersive, so much more enjoyable than the old computer-based training tools that they had. Virtual reality and tablet training just bring a lot of tools to that. So we've got companies like Betaflix. There's another one called King Crow that's on Baton Rouge that's doing great things with that. Praesis is doing a big project with us right now about bomber generation, how we track the bombers when they generate for alert, and it's building its... I want to put Microsoft out of business. So much of what we do in the Air Force as far as tracking generation of getting bombers ready to go to combat. If you got to run a checklist, you got to load gas on the bomber, you got to put weapons on the bomber, you got to put the electronic countermeasures on it, you got to put air in the tires, all these things, surface hydraulic fluid, and there's a huge long checklist that can take many, many hours to get this airplane ready. And you're doing, dozens of airplanes across, 3 different bomber bases, 5 different bomber bases. So for the 3-star that's in charge over in 8th Air Force here at Barksdale Air Force Base, or the 4-star at Global Strike Command, for them to know exactly how each bomber is doing. Right now we rely on PowerPoints. Guys sending emails or making phone calls, and then they update the PowerPoint chart, and then they show the PowerPoint chart. That's just so cumbersome. So what we're building is a data model where everybody can see the same information at the same time. It's real-time information. You don't have version control issues like you do on just updating a Word document. When, if you and I are working on a Word document, we can old versions. You don't want that to happen in warfare. So we're building a tool. Praces is helping us build a tool that will provide the data and the information for our leadership to make knowledge-based decisions, data-informed decisions to keep them all at speed. So that's another cool project. Oh my, there's so many other locals. They're doing a great job.
So on the other side of that question, my last formal question is, as you see it, what are the gaps that still exist in our community in order for us to best support the evolving needs at Barksdale and for the military as a whole?
That one, supporting our airmen. The local area does a great job supporting airmen. Shreveport-Bossier love airmen, and they take great care of them. We've been stationed here 3 times. We retired here and stayed here as civilians. We love the area, and the people here do a great job. The biggest challenge I think airmen have, if you ask the wing commander at Barksdale, and this has been in the past, airmen are worried about crime, perception on crime. So we've got to do more to support airmen about that. Schools, and there's a lot going on there. Some of that's perception, but we got to do a good thing to take care of the schools. And there's several different operations going on. And my own daughter, my wife and I's daughter, she's a product of the Bossier Public Schools and National Merit Scholar, valedictorian. She's doing great things. So she's been served very well by the schools. We're a success story there. So there's a lot of misperceptions out there. So it's a little bit of that. Improving maybe, I'll give a shout out to the Y, some of the recreation facilities. I'm a big cyclist in the local area. I'm a big proponent for bike paths. We don't have very good bike paths like many areas do. We can do a lot to improve on that. But the hunting and fishing, things like that are great. But taking care of airmen, I'd say the big things are the crime, education, and keep doing everything we're doing in the, just loving on them in the churches, in the communities. We're doing a great job there. Keep that up.
And from a business standpoint, like everything you're doing at STRIKEWERX, everything you're doing at Cyber, where are we still deficient in terms of, how can we have more STRIKEWERX? How can we do a better job of having the resources that Barksdale and the military needs here locally to continue to grow this, for lack of a better word, this military business?
Yeah. We need more software companies. Our local schools are doing a great job building a workforce. But Bossier Parish Community College, LSUS, Louisiana Tech, Grambling, they're all doing a great job of providing more cyber graduates between business information systems, computer science, cyber engineering, just certificate programs through the Bossier Parish Community College, getting people different, C++ certificates and things like that. But these people are having to leave the area because there's not enough jobs. So we've got to build more jobs for them to keep all this talent that we're producing. It's been a conscious decision with the CIC, the Cyber Innovation Center, to build out that workforce. And we're doing things like fellowships where we're getting students classified clearances and they're doing classified work. But we got to find more jobs so when they graduate that we can keep them here. So we need computer science work. We need, and if I had the capability, I'd be making chips. It's a lot harder than it sounds, but making chips, our whole country needs domestically produced chips for computers. And if we can figure out a way to do that here locally, that'd be awesome. That's a big challenge that we've got, offshoring, going to Taiwan and other places for chips, and you don't want to depend on supply overseas for things like that. That's a critical need. So those are really the two I think of off the top of the head. Just people that are innovative and want to start up a business and support Global Strike Command and do that. There's got to find those jobs.
Well, Russ, this has all been incredible. Is there anything else that I didn't ask you? I know we covered a lot of ground, but is there anything else that's really important to you that you want to mention? We have the time, if so.
Well, I'll talk about our military. Really puts a lot of responsibility on young men and women. So you asked me about Secret Squirrel. So I was, 24-year-old when I did that. Immense amount of responsibility. I was one of the younger guys. The older guys, the old heads were maybe 30. So we depend a lot on those young men and women back then, and we still do. So that's we provide those men and women with training and training resources and the tools like we're developing, the STRIKEWERX and everything. But we got to keep supporting and loving on those men and women. We're still doing the same things today. We talked about the Y. I swim with the Masters group out there, and I met a young man. He's probably 22, 23 years old. He was a student here at Barksdale for the B-52s. He got assigned to stay here at Barksdale, so I see him every Tuesday and Thursday morning at the pool. And one day he texted our chat group for our Masters group and said, "Hey guys, I don't know if I'm going to be back for the River Cities Triathlon that's going on. I got a business trip I'm going on." We're like, "Oh, okay, all right. I'm not sure where Daniel's going, but we'll see." And then I saw him Tuesday at the pool, and he's like, "Hey Russ, you see that bit about the B-52s going to Romania? I was on that." And if you didn't see in the news, Barksdale just sent 2 B-52s to go do an exercise with Finland and Romania and fly with their fighters. And this is operating over in Eastern Europe, land in that former Soviet bloc country. When I was on alert, I don't know if there were targets in there, but that was a former Soviet bloc country. That was part of USSR. We were going to be fighting against those USSR forces. And now to have a nuclear capable bomber that lands in Romania, that's a first ever thing. And then the bombers took off out of there, and they flew their route for their exercise, and they were intercepted by Russian fighters. And that was in the news, and you've got Putin talking about U.S. bombers flying against Russia and things like that. This is part of statecraft. This is major political movements, and just the bomber task force is what we call it when we send bombers forward. And to have a bomber task force that goes forward in Romania is a huge deal. And for Daniel to say, "I'm going on a business trip," and he's really playing it down. And but he's doing one of these biggest things. He'll never forget that mission. That's something. You're landing in Romania. He's there for a few days, flying against Russian fighters in exercises with former Soviet bloc fighters. That's a huge thing. So we're still putting huge expectations on these young men and women that are doing great things, and it's amazing. And so proud of the guy. And then our chat group goes on, "Oh, yeah, I was on a business trip to Monroe." He's like, "Yeah, guys." So shout out to Daniel and all the young men and women in uniform that are doing great things for us. It's really impressive what they're doing.
Well, I'm so grateful to you and to everything you've done for us and to the entire military. So I appreciate you being here.
Sure.
Is there anything else that you want to mention while we're here? If not, no pressure, but really appreciate you sharing just a tiny bit of your incredible experience.
This is also a great place for retirees. Like I said, I retired after 27 years active duty service, and I stayed working on base as a civil servant for another 5 years until the CIC nonprofit gave me an opportunity to move out there. So I'm really enjoying that. Just love the local community. Over our 3 assignments here, this is one of the most loving, really, communities that we were stationed at. Great running community. We love that, and swimming and biking, and just all the opportunities there are here. So we're really enjoying it. Appreciate you doing what you're doing for bringing up the spirits of Shreveport-Bossier. There's so many naysayers who can be downers and just haters, and we got to rise above that.
Absolutely.
Right.
Thanks, Russ.
Yeah, thanks.
Really appreciate you.